Okay. Let's go to chapter 42. This is the first of three journeys, really, that the Israelites will make to Egypt. What's going on? Famine in the land. L-A-N-D-S, lands. What's going on back up in Canaan? Famine in Canaan. What about who made provision for food up in Canaan for the 7 years of, after the 7 years of plenty? No one. And so what we have is this fact in chapters 41 and 42, pardon me. Jacob sends 10 of his sons to Egypt to get grain, to buy grain, get something to eat. Which son did he not send? Benjamin. Rachel's son. I'm going to send Benjamin down there, so if you will. Verse 9 said Joseph accused them of being what? What did he say they were? Spies. So you see the nakedness of the land, you come and say, you're spies. You're just trying to spy out some things in the process, there. And so verses 14 through 28 gives a record where not all of them, but 9 of them are sent back home. They give a report to Joseph because did Joseph recognize his brothers? He did. And they tell him, you know, that there's 12 servants, so they're telling Joseph that, verse 13. And of one man in Canaan there, and one is not. Of course, that's going to be Joseph. And saying, you're spies again in verse 15. He said, here we're going to prove this thing out, verse 15, he says. By the life of Pharaoh, you shall not go forth hence except your youngest brother come to hither. And you send one, let him fetch your brother, and you'll be kept in prison. And so he put them all together and warred for 3 days. And then Joseph said to them, he said, this do and live, for I fear God. If there be true men, if you be true men, let one of your brethren be bound. So Joseph gets it down to just one. You go back home, and then you bring your youngest brother, and so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. They did so. So they're going back with some grain, with one brother left behind. Who was that brother, by the way? Simeon. Verse 24, Simeon bound him before their eyes. And Joseph commanded to fill all their sacks with corn and to restore all their money, put it back in their sack. And so they loaded up their animals, they headed out, and one of them opened his sack, and guess what he found? Verse 27. Found his money. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. And says their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying, what is this that God had done unto us? God gets the credit for a lot of things he don't want credit for, doesn't he? He does. So. Came to Jacob, told him all what happened to him, verse 29. And they told Jacob, the man who is the Lord of the land spake how to us, verse 30. Roughly. Took us for spies of the country. I can kind of see Joseph talking to him that way a little bit. You will. And they said, we're not spies, we're true men. We be 12 brethren. And he tells them about that. And he says, the man, the Lord of the country said, hereby shall I know that you're true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me. And bring your youngest brother, verse 34, and I'll deliver you. And so will I deliver your brother. And ye shall traffic in the land with. Well, verse 35 says, it came to pass as they emptied their sacks, they said, behold, every man's bundle had one in it. Everyone took his money out, paid for his stuff down in Egypt. He gets back home, he's got all the food, and then he's still got his money. That's not good. They didn't think. They were afraid, again, verse 35. And so Jacob reminds them, you know, Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and said, now you're going to take Benjamin, verse 36. Reuben spake, he said, well, you deliver him to my hand, and I'll bring him to thee again. And and if for his brother is dead, he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way, then you shall, Jacob says, you'll bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. So Reuben steps up, offers to be collateral, I guess, for Benjamin who is going to go with him now in the process there. And chapter 43, Jacob gives in, sends Benjamin with his brother for some more grain through the first 14 verses there and there. And so they're going to go back then, but this time they got Benjamin with him and there. And verse 8 says, Judah said, send the lad with me, and we will arise and go, that we may live and not die, both we and thou, and also our little ones. I'll be surety for him. So Judah ended up being the surety for him in the process. And so Jacob said, well, verse 11, it must be so now, do this. Carry down the man a present. Look at verse 11. When you go back this time, you carry down the man a present, a little balm, a little honey, spices, and myrrh, nuts, and almonds. Verse 12, and take how much money? Double money, and take the money that was brought again in the mouth of your sacks, carry it again to your hand, peradventure it was an oversight. Jacob said, maybe it's just an oversight. And so he's sending gifts now to the man down in Egypt, of course. And that's so. He said in the latter part of 14, if I be bereaved of my children, I am bereaved. Well, verses 15, the brothers go back and they end up actually being entertained at Joseph's house. Let's just quickly look and see how that goes about in the process. There, they took what Joseph gave them, verse 15, went down to Egypt, stood before Joseph. Joseph saw Benjamin, verse 16. And he tells the ruler of his house, bring these men home and slay and make ready, for these men will die to me tonight. So what did Joseph tell his ruler to do? You go get these men and bring them over to my house. You prepare for them, prepare a meal in the process. And the man did it there. And verse 18, it says the men, that would be the sons, they were afraid. Bunch of scaredy cats. They brought into Joseph's house. They said, because of the money that he's bringing in here, because of the money, he's going to seek occasion to us and fall on us. So they came near to the steward of Joseph's house. They communed with him at the door of the house. They began to tell him what happened, you know, where they came first time to buy food, and when we came to the end, we opened our sacks, and every man's money was there in the mouth of his sack, and we brought it again. So it was there, but we brought it back. And other money we brought with our hands. Here's what the man told him here, the steward, verse 23. Peace be to you. Fear not. Your God and the God of your father hath given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. And he brought Simeon out unto them. So Simeon's restored, and the man brought the men water. They washed their feet, gave their asses provender, made ready the present against Joseph, which came at noon. And when Joseph came home, they brought him the present of the house there. They bowed themselves to Joseph, and Joseph asked, first question he asked, verse 27 is what? Is your father well? My father. Is he yet alive? The response was, verse 28, he's in good health, yet alive. Bowed down their hands, and they made obeisance. Do we heard anything about them making obeisance? I believe we read about that before. Yeah. Made obeisance. Wow. Lifted up his eyes, Joseph. Look at verse 29. Can you just kind of picture this in your mind? He saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son. Is this your younger brother of whom you spake unto me? They said, God be gracious unto thee, my son. Joseph made, by says his bowels did yearn. He was emotionally deeply moved, and he had to leave the room. He went into his chamber, out into his bed quarters, I guess, and what did he do? He cried, did he? Wept. He wept. Let's see, it's been, Joseph was 30 years old when he was put in charge of things. He'd been 7 years and 7 years of famine. At least he's at least between 37 and 40 now, right? Sees his brother the first time since in 30 years. In 30 years. washed his face, had to clean himself up, refrain himself. And they sat for him by himself, and they did eat, because the Egyptians might not eat bread, of course. He had a table by himself, the firstborn in the birthright. So when Joseph set the people down by the table to sit down, he set them in order, firstborn, secondborn, thirdborn, all the way down. What did the brothers think about that? Wow. He fooled them, didn't he? And they drank and were merry with him in that particular place, if you will. And really things coming to pass. You know. Well, let's go back to chapter 44. The other problem in the sack. Fill the men's with sacks, put my cup, the silver cup, in the sack of the youngest, verse 2. He did that. As soon as the morning was light, they took their animals, they took off, they were gone out of the city, not yet far, didn't get far out. So Joseph said to the steward, follow the men, and when thou dost overtake them, wherefore have ye rewarded evil for good? So he sends them on the way. Then Joseph sends someone after him and says, what are you doing rewarding me evil for good? And and you've done evil in so doing. Is not this which my Lord drinketh, if you will. He overtook them. He spake to them the same words. Wherefore saith my Lord these words? And verse 8, behold the money which we found in the sack's mouths, we brought it again to you. Verse 9, with whomsoever thy servants it be found, let him die. We also will be my Lord's bondsmen. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Verse 10, let it be according to your words, the guy said. You said it, so be it. And well, they took down to every man his sack, verse 11. Searched it, verse 12. Started with the eldest and left off at the youngest. And who's the youngest? Benjamin. And then they rent their clothes and laid they found it in Benjamin's sack. They found the cup in Benjamin's sack. What they just got through saying? And anybody, ever whose sack you find it, let him do what? Let him die. Okay. But that's not the way it ended up. And they returned to the city, verse 13. Judah and his brethren fell before him on the ground. Joseph questioned, what have you done? Would not such a man as I certainly divine? Wouldn't you know I'd find that out? What shall we say unto my Lord? How shall we clear ourselves? God hath found out the iniquity of thy servants. And verse 17, God forbid that I should do so, but the man in whose hand the cup is found, he shall be my servant. And as for you, get you up in peace unto your father. Well, Judah had to intercede. He was the surety, you might remember. And speak a word in my Lord's ear, for you're even as Pharaoh. And so the Lord asked us, hey, father or brother? And he says, well, you ask that. And says, this one is a child of his old age, a little one there and there. And so, verse 22, the lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would do what? Did that make a point into Joseph? I think so, don't you? I think so. And you said to your servants, except the youngest brother come down, you shall see my face no more. In that. And said, we can't do it. So, anyway. And so, verse 39, therefore when I come to thy servant my father, and the lad be not with us, seeing that his life is bound up in this lad's life, when he seeth the lad is not with us, he will die. And that. And so, for thy servant became surety, Judah said, I became it. I'll bear the blame of my father. I pray thee, let thy servant bide instead of the lad. How shall I go up? So Judah has made a rather impassionate plea in that, and then something's going to happen because of that in chapter 45. Joseph, how did that impact him, verse 1? Could not refrain himself, he cried. And every man go out from me. So they took all the Egyptian men out there, and Joseph was there with just his brothers. And look at verse 3. Wouldn't you like to have been there when Joseph made this announcement to those fellows there? What did he say? I am thy brother. Ooh, I am thy brother. I am Joseph. doth my father yet live? And the brethren stood there, and they said, all he doesn't say. They said that. Yeah. The trouble. Come near me, I pray you. I'm Joseph, your brother. You sold me into Egypt. Therefore don't be grieved. For look at verse 5. God did send me before you to preserve life. These 2 years have the famine been in the land, and there are yet 5 years to go. So that tells us something about Joseph's age. He was 30 years old when he began to serve, 7 years, and then 2, that's another 9 years. 39 years old, right? That fix him up? Fix him up pretty good. God, verse 7, God sent me to preserve your posterity. And it was not you that sent me hither, but God. He hath made me a father to Pharaoh, the lord of his house, and a ruler throughout the land of Egypt. That 17-year-old boy that they sold out, he's made some pretty good progress in life, hadn't he? He sure has. So Joseph tells him this, you go to my father, say to him, your son Joseph, say to him, thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me lord over Egypt. Come down now unto me, tarry not. You dwell in the land of Goshen. Verse 11, there will I nourish thee, yet 5 years of famine. Verse 13, you'll tell my father of all my glory in Egypt, all you've seen. Verse 14, says he fell upon his brother Benjamin's neck and wept, and Benjamin wept on his neck. He kissed all his brethren, wept upon them. Family reunion of no small nature. And so the fame was heard throughout Pharaoh. The word got around quickly. It didn't even have Facebook. Got around quickly. And laid your beasts, go get you in the land of Canaan, take your father. And he lays them down really with goods and everything else. Take wagons out of the land of Egypt for your little ones there. Regard not your stuff. Don't worry about that stuff. You're going to have all you need here in Egypt. Verse 21, Joseph gave them wagons according to the commandment, gave them gave them provision, and he gave each man charges of raiment. Benjamin he gave 300 pieces of silver and 5 changes of raiment. Seemed like a little favoritism there. And there it is. To his father he sent 10 asses laden with good things, 10 she-asses of corn and bread. Sent his brethren away. They departed. They said to him, they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan and to Jacob their father. And they told him, look at verse 26. Here's Jacob, old man. And they told him, they said, Job said, Jacob, daddy? Wow. Joseph is yet alive. He is governor over all the land of Egypt. And it said Jacob's heart fainted, for he believed them not. I don't believe I believe them either, do you? He believed them not. Anyway, great. Jacob's good day, good day. So wonderful things taking place. And Joseph is yet alive. And wow. Do what, Carmen? That's exactly what they done. So, yeah. All right. Let's see. Chapter 46. Chapter 6. That last verse in 28 says, I will go and see him before I die. So be it, so be it. Chapter 46, and we're going to have to hustle just a little bit here. Jacob, his family moved to Egypt. They go down just like they were told to do there. And so they took all their cattle and their goods and all that stuff. And verse 8 talks about the names of the children of Israel which came unto Egypt with Jacob. And it gives the names of them there in the process on down through there. And it talks about the sons of Judah, Onan, and Shelah. And but and Onan died, and the sons of Pharez and Hezron, and the sons of Issachar, Tola, and so forth, on down through there. And verse 14, the sons of Zebulun, there. So it gives all those sons down through there, and it gets down to about the let's see, and really goes all the way down to about verse 26. It says, all the souls that came with Jacob into Egypt were the souls of 66. And the sons of Joseph, which were born to him in Egypt, were 2 souls. So altogether there were 70, if you will. In the latter part of that chapter, we have the record where Jacob and Joseph are united. Wonderful event there. Joseph made ready, went up to meet Israel, his father, to Goshen, presented himself to him, fell on his neck. Must have been quite a reunion. So Israel now said to Joseph, now let me die, since I've seen thy face, because thou art yet alive. And he's ready to get on. And well, he reminds them that Pharaoh's going to call him, verse 33, just what you say, what's your occupation? And so you say your servants have been about cattle from their youth even unto now. And it says, for every shepherd is an abomination unto Egyptians. Wow. How do you recognize that? All shepherds, cattle raisers, they're an abomination to Israelites. And now Joseph tells his brother, says, you tell them I'm shepherds, cattlemen. Oh. Pharaoh, even though they had held cattle in abomination, they probably held the money which they got from him pretty good, reckon. I don't know. Maybe that's it in the process. 47 talks about the famine conditions in latter part of 47. It talks about where Joseph's family is presented to Pharaoh, and he gives his brethren possession in the land of Egypt, isn't I said so. And 23, Joseph said unto the people, I have brought you this day in your land for Pharaoh. Lo, here is a seed for you. And you take your seed, you're going to give a 5th part to Pharaoh. Joseph's always taking care of Pharaoh. And they said, you've saved our lives. And so Joseph, verse 26, made a law over all the land of Egypt unto this day, that Pharaoh should have the 5th part, except the land of the priest only. It came to this. So Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, the country of Joseph, there. So 17 years, the whole age was 100. Verse 28, Jacob lived in Egypt 17 years. So the whole of the age of Jacob was 147 years. And then he makes, before he dies, he gets Joseph and makes him put his hand under his thigh, which is a binding away for an oath, and made him the promise that he would not leave him there in Egypt, but he would bury him and carry him out of Egypt and bury me in the burying place, in their burying place of his fathers. Where would that be, by the way? Cave of Machpelah in front. Chapter 48, 47 talks about the famine conditions. All the money in the land is gathered into Pharaoh's house. All the herds are taken in exchange for bread. So people come and Joseph collects the money for it. He gets them, all the animals, when they run out of money, they give them the herds. And Egyptians sell their land, become servants. And so how did Pharaoh fare in all of this? He did all right, didn't he? Because of Joseph. And why would Joseph be that favorable toward Pharaoh? I ask you first. Say that again, Rick. Yeah. He'd been treated well by Pharaoh. Of course, Joseph treated Pharaoh very well in return, didn't he? After all, Pharaoh was the king of the land. He was the ruler. And Joseph apparently had respect for that, and he respected Pharaoh, and he served Pharaoh. And this particular Pharaoh, I don't know his name in the process, he was one who did well in the process of setting up Joseph to be really the ruler over the land and taking care of everything for him in the process there. So Joseph swears Jacob will be buried with his fathers, latter part of verse 47. Verse chapter 48, we have a present where Joseph is going to pronounce a blessing on Manasseh and Ephraim. And there, blessed by Joseph. That goes really all the way basically down through chapter 48. And so Verse 21, Israel said unto Joseph, Behold, I die, but God shall be with you, and bring you again into the land of your fathers. Moreover, I have given to thee one portion above thy brethren, which I took out of the hand of the Amorite with my sword, and with my bow. So Joseph was given an extra portion there. And I'm trying to find the verse 5 in chapter 48. Thy two sons Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born to thee in the land of Egypt, before I came unto thee in Egypt, are mine. Joseph said, they are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine, and the issue which thou begettest after them shall be thine. Now what did Jacob mean when he said Ephraim and Manasseh are going to be mine? And all the other sons you have, Joseph, are going to be yours. In other words, Ephraim and Manasseh are going to be treated exactly as if they were Jacob's children. And when you have the land of Egypt divided, you have a tribe of Ephraim and a tribe of Manasseh, just like the other boys. And so they made it his. So 49, there we have Jacob blesses his sons. He goes by and gives them all a particular characteristic trait. We're not going to go by and list all of those in interest of having a little time for review tonight in the process. But he does give a blessing to them, and goes one by one down through the process, and he starts off with Reuben. Let me see if I can find Reuben in there somewhere. He's the first one, I believe. Reuben, verse 3, and then you got Simeon and Levi, brethren, verse 4. He goes right on down the line. Judah, verse 4, and he goes and pronounces a particular trait or characteristic to each of the sons and their blessing, which is going to be upon them in the process, and goes on down through there. Then, latter part of chapter 49, he gives instructions relative to his burial. And so let's look at that quickly. 29, he charged them, he says, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers, where? In the cave that is in the land of Ephraim the Hittite. Who was buried there? Abraham. Leah. That's a family burial place, wasn't it? It really was. And so, in the land of Canaan. So, verse 31 says, there they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife, and buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife. And Jacob says, that's where I buried who? Leah. Didn't bury Rachel there, did he? Buried her son. So when Jacob had made an end, 33, of the command of his sons, he gathered up his feet unto the bed, yielded up the ghosts, was gathered unto his people. And Joseph is now going to come into it. Jacob is buried in the cave in the field of Machpelah, chapter 50. And Joseph said, my father made me swear, saying, my grave which I have digged for me in land of Canaan, there shalt thou bury me. And then Pharaoh said, relative to that in verse 6, go up, bury thy father. So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, and the elders of the house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt. I guess that's what you would call a pretty good-sized procession, funeral procession, don't you reckon? Of some distance. All the house of Joseph and his brethren and his father's house, only their little ones and their flocks and their herds, they left in the land of Goshen. Went up with him both chariots and horsemen. It was a very great company, verse 9. Came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond Jordan. There they mourned. Sore lamentation. Made a mourning for his father 7 days. And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites saw the mourning in the floor of Atad, they said, this is a grievous mourning to the Egyptians. Wherefore the name of it was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond Jordan. And his sons did unto him according to his commandments. They carried him in the land of Canaan. They buried him in the cave of Machpelah, verse 13, with Abraham. Verse 14, Joseph returned to Egypt. All that went with him to bury his father. And Joseph's brethren, what Joseph's brethren said, well, now my father's dead. What's Joseph going to do to us now? That things are going to be different around the house, folks. He said that. And so they're going to have to deal with that. And so they said in 17, "Forgive, I pray thee, the trespass of thy brethren and their sin." And Joseph wept when they spake unto him. Brethren also went and fell down before his face, and they said, "Behold, we be thy servants." Joseph said, "Fear not, for I am in the place of God." Wow. That's quite a statement, isn't it? "As for you, you thought evil, but God meant it unto good, to bring to pass, as it is this day, to save much people alive." So Joseph was in the place of God in the fact that he's in the place where God put him to do exactly what God would have him to do. And fear not, he says. Well, verse 22 said, Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's house. And Joseph, how long? 110 years. 110 years. And so that'd make him 137, I guess, 17 starting. Joseph saw Ephraim's children of the third generation. So his children, his grandchildren, does that include the great-grands? The children also of Machir, the son of Manasseh, were brought up on Joseph's knees. Joseph said unto his brethren, I die, 24, and God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land, unto the land which he sware to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. And Joseph took an oath of the children of Israel, saying, verse 25, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry my bones from hence. And Joseph died, being 110 years old. And what did they do to him? They embalmed him. And he was put in a coffin in Egypt. I guess that's the first embalming that we have specific record of in the process. We have about 15 or 20 minutes, unless you want out early tonight, to go back and review just a little bit. And according to my record, we have 4 of our students in class which are credit students. You are especially blessed because you get an envelope with a stamp on it. Now the rest of you don't get a stamp, okay? Which means if you want to, you can take a copy of the exam and do it and just review it. And if you want to send it back to me, I'll be glad to grade it and send it back to you, but you don't have to. You don't have to. Reggie, I'm going to ask for your help, my brother. And the 4 that get the stamped envelopes are Beth and Reggie and Amber and Josh. And don't open them now. No fair, don't open. Don't open. If you had a pen and paper by, you might want to just make a note or something that you go back and review before you take your test, because you're going to take your test without your notes. Oh boy, I knew that was going to be bad. But I think you'll be proud that you did once you get along with us, okay? You want to take one to Marcia, that's all right, Carmen. So. Here are some of the things which you need to have give some special attention to. One is the fact whether or not you have read the book of Genesis and whether or not you have completed all your study questions. And that's going to be a major portion of your grade, because that's a major portion of your work in the process there. Yeah. Okay, thank you, sir. I'll give that to Pete and repeat somewhere, okay? And early on in the book of Genesis, one thing that we mentioned several times along the way is that we talked about basically a 9-point outline of the book of Genesis. And this outline is considered going back, for example, the creation of the world and the fall of man, and talks about, one way of putting it is 2 lines of Adam's descendants. You got chapters 3 and chapter 4. And in chapter 5, you have that genealogy chart. I can say that. Genealogy chart. And there, so some way to identify those couple chapters. And of course, in chapters 6 through 9, what do you have in the book of Genesis? History of the flood. So, that's pretty good. So anytime you open up Genesis, you open up chapter 7, well, we're talking about the flood here. That's one advantage to me, I think, of being able to have at least a general outline, a workable outline of a book. And of course, Genesis was 50 chapters, would seem to be somewhat foreboding. However, after we get through the history of the flood, we have the events in 10 and 11 where the nations were divided. And man, you remember where man decided he was going to get together and find a way to heaven on his own way, build a Tower of Babel, and so you just go back and look at your class notes on that and just refresh your mind on it. And of course, once you get to chapter 12, it's just a matter of trying to remember the chapter divisions more than anything else, because you got Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Joseph. There you go. But you got chapter 12 through 25:18 and 25:19 through 26, 27:1 through 37:1. That's easy to remember. And then 37:2 through the end of the book. So just you need to have a concept of that. So when you open up the book of Genesis, this is where we are and what we're reading in the process. And have one section on the test which simply says, "Who am I?" And so you're going to be asked to identify certain individuals. If you was going to put a "Who am I" question up, what question would you raise? Anybody got a "Who am I" question? You could say, "I'm the first man." I didn't say it was on the test, but you could say that. Or I'm the oldest man. I was the oldest man. You might say, I'm the fellow who killed my brother, and I'm a man that I never did die. Remember him? Yeah. Okay. I was a man. I was created in the image of God. That's kind of an unusual fellow, isn't it? And what about this? When I was 75 years old, God told me to leave home. Yeah, that might be something there. And then God promised this man a land all the way from the river Nile all the way up to Euphrates. By the way, there might be occasion where it's all right if if the same person answers two different questions. That's all right. It's all right to repeat if you need to repeat in the process. And talking about Abraham's family, who was his firstborn? Who was the promise born? Yeah. And talking about his cousin, his nephew. I was a fellow that lived over in the city of Sodom. Ooh, that's no good, is it? The process. And everybody, you can't have a review of your class without having true and false questions. Y'all know that now, don't you? That's required. That's just required. And so go back and think about some of the things which we talked about in class about God's creation of the world. In fact, and so, in fact, the true-false questions, I have 10 of them on your test. I won't tell you, I have 10 of them. And every one of them are true-false questions, statements concerning creation. So you just go back and rethink about matters of creation. God created the world. What did he create it out of? When were things created? Sun and moon. When did it come into existence? What did he make the third day? First day, light. Then the sun and moon didn't get around to the fourth day. Ooh. And yet there was no darkness on the earth, was it? It was at the beginning. The earth was void and without form, and darkness upon the face of the deep. Okay. All right. And God made, when he created the various vegetation things, what have you, trees and grass and green and everything else, And where was the seed found in those things? In itself, wasn't it? So God created, so something He's created. Someone says, so God created things full grown. A lot of people in our world always try to question the age of the earth based upon the fact that, X number of years, that and the other. But how old was the earth when it was first created? Huh? Say that again, Nancy. Brand new one. How old did it look like? Oh, if the scientist got to it and run his test upon it, they'd get a few million years out of it, wouldn't it? Because He created everything full grown in the process. Great lights He created. What did He say about what He created? Just good? Huh? Yeah, very good, wasn't it? Yeah, sure did. However, there's one thing He said that He created was not good. What was that? Man be alone, didn't He, Sister Carmen? 2:18. Not good that man should be alone. I'll make a helpmate for him. And of course, Creve, when God created Eve and everything, He had to get a special kind of dirt to get her here, right? Is that right, Amber? No. Okay. And good. So just thinking, just think about things concerning the creation. And don't worry about it. You're all going. If you opened it up right now, took it, you would do more than well, if you will. Got a few short answers there, and God placed some trees in the garden. Two trees named in the garden. What are they? Tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And the Lord said, just go have your fill of both of them, right? No, there was a penalty if they took of one of them. Which one was that? Knowledge of good and evil. And the result was you eat it and you die. There you go. And we had a memory verse, and this is another part you need to be sure you have your memory verses completed and graded, and I probably have all your grades. Let me look and see. Except Reggie Carter's. Y'all know a fellow by the name of Reggie Carter? Okay. When you finish your memory verses, Reggie, take your Bible and check them, and every error is -1. And then let me know what you grade. You can just add it on your test when you turn it back. Okay. And of course, you can go look toward things. One of your memory verses said, I will put enmity between what? Thee, the woman, and thy seed, between thee and the serpent, between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy heel. I can't even remember. Tell me what that verse says, but I will put enmity between thee and the woman, between thy seed and her seed. It shall bruise thy head, and thou shalt bruise his heel. I knew we could do that. Okay, bruise his heel. All right. And you all know, everybody's on the ark, I'm sure. You know how long it rained upon the earth. And how long did it rain upon the earth? Huh? 40 days and 40 nights. 40 days and nights. And how long was that water upon the earth? How long?
1 year.
Okay. God said, here's I'm going to make a covenant with you, and here's a sign that I'm not going to ever destroy this earth again by water. Rainbow. This is one you won't have a problem with because part of your memory verse is the threefold promise that God made to Abraham. God said to Abraham, get thee out of thy country, from thy kindred, from thy father's house, unto the land that I will show thee, and I will do what? I will make thee great. Do what, Carmen? Say that again, dear. Yeah. I will bless thee, make thy name great, and thou shalt be a blessing. Yeah. And all something of the earth will be, all families of the earth. Okay. Be a blessing to all families of the earth. So go back and review that and be sure you're up to date on that, if you will. And of course, Jacob's son, you already memorized those by the song. You got that down. His brothers, who bought Joseph, why was Joseph put in prison by Potiphar, give the meaning of Pharaoh's dreams, and I like that phrase, so I'm sure you'll probably find what it means to be in the second chariot of Pharaoh, okay? Okay, brethren, I quit. How about you? You ready to quit? All right. Brother Josh, would you mind wording a closing prayer for us? Amen. By the way, I do have my address on the paper that you have in the envelope there, so you can send that to that address, if you would, please.